Okay, call me Adam.
Call you Adam?
Yeah, I've been
You don't look like
struggling
Adam.
with well, basically, I'm having a hard time with seeing how I see spirituality and this world as two separate realms, and it's difficult for me to figure out how to mesh the two. So I feel like, yes, I could teach my kids, I can be reminded of all these great things in grace. However, I feel like the world is still against me. And it's very difficult for me to just, I don't know, walk completely in grace but still exist in this world. I feel like even then I could still have things that are horrible take place. Things that are horrible could still happen to my kids, and I would definitely feel horrible about that. So lately it's just like I'm always trying to figure out, just like you said, a formula. I teach math, so it sucks. But I always think if I do step 1, 2, and 3, I'm looking for a certain outcome. However, it doesn't always work like that, and then still I'm too afraid to stop trying. Like I want to still just, let me try this then. If this doesn't work, okay, let me try this now. And it doesn't feel good, but once again, I'm just too afraid to just stop. I feel like if I don't do something, everything's going to crumble, and it's going to be all my fault because I knew better. I knew I should have figured something out. And I know that's not how it should be, but I cannot get rid of that. It is heavy.
Right.
With everything, he tells me, okay, just ease up. It's not that deep. Like anything, I think of 20 different outcomes that could happen, and I'm like, well, we can't do that because that may happen or that may happen. Instead of just trusting God to take care of it, I'm really, I guess, taking that on my own. And like I said, it doesn't feel good, but I'm just too afraid to just let it go.
The fear in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would say that I'm in the world. I don't live separate from the world. I think what we separate is the two ways of thinking. And so I don't look at my life in this world as like a dual existence. I think the spiritual and the physical have smashed into one in this human body. I have that which is spiritual dwelling in me and that which is physical. And they've come together as one. And so the distinction I make isn't that there's the spiritual and a physical. The distinction I make is that there's two mindsets. There's the wisdom of the world and there's the wisdom of God. And so while I walk in the world, I walk by the wisdom of God and not the wisdom that's of the world. Okay? Now, if you find you're thinking like that, then it's coming from a root. And it sounds like the root is fear. And I might be wrong. Mm-hmm. But if the root is fear, then fear is going to produce that way of thinking in you. Because the fear in the world is going to cause you to function as if you need to do all these things in order to preserve your own life. And so what I would say is the answer is to, you could cry out to God and ask Him to show you, but the answer is to hear the message of grace and what God's done to conquer the things in the world that you're afraid of. Do you see what I'm saying? You need a revelation that the things you're afraid of in the world have been conquered.
I do.
That's what you need a revelation of. And so that's what I would ask God. Forget about all the figuring. Forget about trying to understand all the nuances. I would just say, Lord, I need a revelation that the life I have in you has overcome all these things I'm afraid of. That I find myself walking in this world afraid of things that Jesus said He overcame. I want my life to be born from the foundation that I have also overcome this world already so I can walk in freedom. And that's what I would do. And I wouldn't get down on yourself if you think you have a bad day or a bad week. I would just encourage you, that's only a sign to talk to God about it and just to keep talking and having this conversation with Him about how you feel. So for instance, if you find yourself overcoming with these thoughts and you find yourself right in the midst of thinking about them, I would encourage you to think out loud about it with God. I would encourage you to start talking with God as if He was in a physical body standing next to you about the things you're afraid of. And I would encourage you to engage like that with Him and begin talking to Him about the things that you're afraid of. And that you need a revelation that you've already been crucified with Christ. And it's not that you're going to get an intellectual knowledge and just all of a sudden say, oh, I get it. It's a heart thing. But I wouldn't discount that it's already happening in your heart because you still think you see some remnants of fear. Right. I wouldn't say that's an indication that God's not already busy setting you free. In fact, I would say He's already busy setting you free. And the fact that you get pressed in sometimes by what's in the world isn't an indication that you're now lost. It's an indication that you're in a world that's filled with corruption. And sometimes that corruption can come and smack you in the face. Mm-hmm. And so when you get smacked in the face, you don't want to then think, well, what's wrong with me that I feel this way? I must not get it. You want to engage with God in that moment about the fear that you're feeling, why you're feeling afraid. And then you want to engage with God about what he's done to conquer the fear that's in the world. If you read most of the Psalms, David starts off the first half of the Psalms, woe is me, man. And then towards the end, towards the middle, he starts talking to God about the truth. And then towards the end, he's busy with, my cup runneth over. You see, and so I think sometimes in Christianity, and I know in my own life, I was waiting for this magic wand moment, or like this place of nirvana, that I was going to somehow magically get to this place where nothing ever bothered me, ever.
Definitely.
Ever. And so every time something bothered me, I would now be like, I would feel like an illegitimate child of the Father, because certainly the Father wouldn't be bothered. So in that I'm bothered, then I must be not a real child. I'm an illegitimate child. Like you said, I'm Adam. Listen, you're not Adam because you feel that way. And then so all my time with God became about what's wrong with me. I'm not as I ought to be. But then God took me to the Word made flesh in Jesus, and he said, hey, Greg, do you think Jesus felt pressed in upon in the Garden of Gethsemane? And I thought, yeah, that guy sweat blood there. He said, do you think there was something wrong with him, or that he was Adam in that moment? I was like, no way. Jesus never was in doubt or in unbelief. He said, exactly. And so what he started guiding me into was that we're in a world with corruption, and it's not abnormal to be smacked across the face sometimes when we're staring that thing dead in the face. It's not abnormal to be smacked in the face. But then the question becomes, how do we process the smack we just got in the face? Right? And the way Jesus processed it, Jesus was staring death in the face, the worst kind of a death. He was going to be stripped naked. He was going to be beat senseless. That was enough to kill him. Then he was going to have the crown of thorns, pierced, hung up on a cross to die. He knew it was coming in the garden. And he felt so pressed in upon by the fear that's in the world that his flesh actually bled. It bled. Now, in that moment, he began fellowshipping with God. He didn't think, what's wrong with me that I don't get it? Why am I thinking this way? He realized that his life was found in the Father, and he began talking to the Father about the Father's will for his life to be born from the Spirit and not born from the flesh. And so his heart began fellowshipping with the life that he had in God instead of the life he could have in the world. And then what happened was the life he had in God shrunk the fear that was in the world down to nothing. It disesteemed it. And so that's what I would encourage you to do. Don't think there's something wrong with you if you find yourself pressed in upon. You got kids, man. You want good for your kids. You have a family. You want good for your family. But you don't want to define the life you possess by analyzing everything that could happen in the world ever, everything bad that could happen, and think, I got to save everything. But when you find yourself pressed in upon because you're a mother, it's a normal thought. That's when you just want to start talking to God, like Jesus did in the garden. But don't, the serpent wants to come and tell you, oh, you're like Adam, look at you. You're not, are you really a daughter? If you really were a daughter of the Most High, would you feel that way? You see, that's the serpent trying to get you to function as if you're not as you ought to be. It makes sense to God that you could feel pressed in like that. He's not like, what's wrong with Japeri? That she doesn't just have peace. Hasn't she seen what I've done? No. See, Jesus came and indwelt our flesh and felt the great pressing in upon of our flesh when death confronts it. He is a compassionate high priest, meaning he knows what it feels like when the darkness surrounds you and starts telling you, you're gonna die. He knows what that feels like. And so what you want to realize is God is with you in that darkness, not ashamed of you. He doesn't feel as if there's something wrong with you. He understands that you could feel that way. And now he wants you to engage him in that place. He's engaging you. He's not standing outside of the darkness saying, Japeri, come out of the darkness and you'll have life. He has come into the darkness with you, and now he's trying to tap you on the shoulder. I know. I'm right here with you. Let's talk. He's trying to engage you in a conversation in the midst of the darkness that comes in like the fog, right? Everything looks pretty good, and then all of a sudden the fog comes in. You're like, oh, I can't see. He knows. And so that's what I would say in my heart for you. I think it's less about you don't get it, and I think it's more about how you process it when the world comes and smacks you in the face. You know? Don't be discouraged. You like to do things the right way. You're kind of a perfectionist. So am I. I think for people like you and me, and you could rebuke me if you like, and And I'm sorry if I let the cat out the bag. But for people like you and me, I tend to also feel great anxiety if I don't think things are perfect. And God has unwound that for me to a tremendous degree, to where now less and less I feel stressed out about it. And I just find myself walking with him. And I would encourage you, you've already started walking with him, and just be aware that he's with you. Sorry I didn't give you a formula.
I didn't need it.
I would agree with Greg and say, no, not Adam. But in my walk, I found that each story of everyone here, it's their own intimacy, and that's the part of the treasure, that he knows me better than anyone. And so he's shining. I see light shining here, and that he's shining light on it. Just as you're asking, well, this is not right. I see the light, and that he is going to reveal that to you, and your testimony is needed because most people feel like that.
That's exactly right. Jesus has experienced exactly what you're experiencing so that he could be a light to you and lead you out of the darkness. What will happen is as you become more led out of the darkness, you begin to find yourself with the light shining out of you that will shine back to other people that are in the darkness. And you'll help. They'll feel like you're walking with them out. Like we're all walking together. You know, we're not walking alone. We're walking together. That's one of the reasons why you come to a fellowship, is so you realize you're walking together with people and with God. Right? Walk with me as I walk with God in the cool of the day. That's what we're doing when we come here. We're walking with God in the cool of the day with one another, and that we just help remind each other of the truth.
I think that the enemy would have you feel that you're alone, and you're actually with the majority.